In my last video, I dove into Need for Speed Shift for the first time in years. I went into it expecting an underrated, often overlooked sim racer, but came away from it with more mixed opinions. If you'd like to check out my full analysis, I've linked the video on the screen, and I've dropped the entire Need for Speed series playlist in the description for your viewing pleasure. Need for Speed Shift was the latest game in my journey to play every Need for Speed game, and with Shift now out of the way, that leads us to Need for Speed Nitro. With Need for Speed Nitro, the keys were handed over to EA Montreal. They were best known at the time for Army of Two, as well as being the go-to studio for bringing big franchises to the Wii, like SSX and Skate. So it makes sense that they were given Need for Speed 2. But here's the thing, I don't really play or collect Wii games. When I think of that console's library, outside of Mario and Zelda, my mind kind of goes to the graveyard of shovelware, especially in the racing genre. Games like Eminem's Kart and Cruisin' come to mind. So naturally, I was curious. Was Need for Speed Nitro a proper Need for Speed game, or was it just another game to add to the shovelware trash pile? Let's find out together. My name is Mercy, and I played Need for Speed Nitro for the first time. And well, let's get into it. Need for Speed Nitro released on November 3rd, 2009 for the Wii and DS. Today we're going to be primarily focused on the Wii version of the game, as the DS version is pretty different, and so I'll be saving that for an upcoming handheld games video. Get subscribed so you don't miss that. The first thing that really jumped out to me with Nitro is just how stylized it is. This is thematically so far removed from anything that I've seen so far in the series. The cars have exaggerated proportions with big wheels and squashed bodies. Some cars are more exaggerated than others too. For example, I don't think the Lancer Evo looks too much different from its real-life counterpart, but the Chevy Camaro has giant tires, and you can even have a big-ass blower come out of the hood. There are a bunch of different licensed cars in the game, from classic muscle cars like the Chevy C3 Corvette, to more modern exotics like a Lamborghini Gallardo. There are also some pure oddballs here too I wouldn't normally see in a racing game. Like, for example, there's a Nissan Cube. Yeah, ew. I like the inclusion of these oddball cars, but keep them away from me. I'd say the coolest feature of this game is its graffiti system. Whoever is leading the race, it'll spray their graffiti on the walls of the map for all of those behind you to see. So when you're leading, it's really cool to see the walls light up with your pattern. It's a small detail, sure, but it's something I haven't really seen before in a game, and it makes leading the pack in Nitro a little more fun, and trailing a little more frustrating. Speaking of that graffiti, all of that is customizable from a bunch of different presets, and changing out parts on your car is as easy as selecting what part of the body you want changed and clicking it. I gotta admit though, this is very limited, and so you won't be spending a ton of time in here, even if it does have a paint booth. The paint booth in concept is a good idea. Having to use the Wiimote to point where you want to brush onto the car, I think is a good use of the controller. But I found that it just kind of fell apart in practice. I found this to be very buggy. Sometimes it would apply the texture instantly, and other times it was more finicky. I'd have to give it a few seconds to apply my pattern to the car. And by the time it applied, it had already smudged all across the car, and I'd have to start over. I'm not a huge customization guy like this. I do like when games have paint booths, but I do have a tendency to just pick a preset livery, maybe stick a few stickers on, change the paint, and go. So this didn't bother me too much. What did bother me though is the lack of performance tuning or mods. I understand that this is supposed to be a more pick up and play casual game, but that sort of thing just rubs me the wrong way. A big part of why I love the Need for Speed games is taking a junk car and tuning it up into something great, and that just isn't here. Being able to max out a car that you've gotten to grips with, and then having that realization of like, okay, I can't squeeze out any more performance from this car, let me go ahead and trade this in and get something else. That just isn't here in Need for Speed Nitro. Every car has a specific class they fit into with a preset list of stats, and there is nothing you can do to change that. So now it gets to a point where, oh, I struggled with that event, maybe I need to trade in my car for the one right above this one, for that extra little speed boost or drift advantage or whatever you're looking for. Now, I'm not saying that every game I play needs to be like this. There are plenty of classic arcade racers with no vehicle tuning that I love, but not having vehicle tuning is just a small piece of a much larger, much more problematic pie. That pie being, Nitro has so little in common with the previous Need for Speeds that came before it. It got to a point during my playthrough where I was questioning why the Need for Speed title was put on this game at all. I was wondering why I was playing the game at all. It doesn't look, feel, sound, or play like any title in the series so far. And I'm one for experimentation. My opinion is that as long as the game is engaging, I'm usually okay with them slapping a big name on maybe an unrelated title. Ridge Racer Unbounded is the game that comes to my mind. It's a game that was a huge departure from the previous titles. It barely had anything to do with Ridge Racer at all, but I think it was a really great game in its own right. Whereas I tend to have a problem with games like Burnout Crash, where they feel like slop thrown onto shelves with a big title attached to it. Can you guess which side of the spectrum Need for Speed Nitro sits with me? Yeah, it's not good. But let me explain why. So, the bulk of your time with Nitro will be spent in the career mode, with 5 different locations set across 3 championships. The 5 locations are based on real-life cities, those being Rio, Cairo, Madrid, Singapore, and Dubai. Each of these locations are represented by a top racer, and so your goal is to acquire stars to progress through each championship and become the top racer. It's a pretty basic career mode, and ultimately gets the job done. There's no real narrative, there's nothing holding all of these events together, except for very brief visuals of each of the previously mentioned top racers. Speaking of those, they all have unique designs that generally represent their home cities or countries. For example, Thiago's car is green and yellow to represent Brazil. Like I said, generally represent, it's so vague. The character I liked the most had to be Omar. He's this big fat guy that drives an old Volkswagen Beetle. Crap on me all you want, I have loved the Beetle since I was a little kid. And now I'm a fat guy, so someday I hope to be a big fat guy in a Beetle too. But I digress. The characters don't really add anything to the game, and for me, I wonder why they're even here. Each city in the game has a few different track layouts, with Rio being among the easiest, and Dubai being the hardest. Problem being, each city only has 2 circuit layouts, with a 3rd drag racing layout. So that leaves us with only 10 circuits total, which you'll be racing on multiple times per championship for 3 championships. Can you maybe see how this game would get old? The tracks themselves are fine, I guess. None of them really stood out to me, and I found myself just kind of on autopilot while racing them. The modes themselves aren't much better either. All of them are fairly standard Need for Speed fare, those being circuit races, time trials, toll booth being like checkpoint races, and the previously mentioned drag racing. Drag racing was the only mode where it felt like a proper Need for Speed mode. You're still warming up your tires, you're still launching off the line, and shifting through the gears and through traffic, just like in Pro Street and other titles. The other modes, however, just kind of feel like a chore to get through, and that mostly boils down to the physics and the level of competition. Starting with the physics, this is the kind of game where you're going to need to drift to make the corners. If you don't drift, you won't build up boost, and you won't be able to keep up. I know I have a reputation for being a crappy drifter, I acknowledge that, but this just doesn't handle like any other game I've played so far. To initiate a drift in this, you tap the brake and then steer in the direction you want to turn. It sounds pretty straightforward, but I still found myself sliding into walls, bouncing off of other competitors, and really struggling to score any stars beyond just podium finishes. And the problem with hitting walls goes beyond just a minor speed loss, with this game introducing a damage system, to the point where you can't use boost if you're too damaged. The only way to repair damage is to drive into these wrench icons on the track, which, okay, I don't mind that much. I'm cool with games like Mario Kart and Blur, but many times it's a choice between driving through those wrenches or the police badges. Oh yeah, there's police in Nitro, and I don't know what it is, maybe I'm just fed up with the game, but they might just be the most annoying police ever conceived. These guys are brutal. They will 100% drive up next to you and grind you into a wall, or they might just corner bomb you and destroy your car. I kind of like how this game handles the wanted level though. You have the typical star system, but you can target another car with the police pickup and pass your wanted level to them. It's a good idea, I would say in theory, but in practice the police just don't seem to go after the AI all that much unless they're targeted by this power-up. The AI in this game I found was incredibly fast. Watching the AI felt like I was in another game entirely. Like these guys were gaining speed mid-drift like they were playing Ridge Racer, and here I am sliding, barely holding it together, dropping through the standings like a rock. And I thought, well, maybe it is my controller. I was emulating this after all using Dolphin. So I switched over to a proper GameCube controller with an adapter. Same issue. So then I thought, well, it's a Wii game. Maybe I should be using a Wiimote. Yeah, I'm gonna shut that down real quick. Motion controls were never going to be the answer. So there are only two things I can think of as to why I'm having such an issue with this game. It's either a skill issue, which I'm not ruling out. It could totally be a skill issue, or it's the game. With all of the other issues that I've tallied up so far, I'm leaning towards it being the game. So not only is Need for Speed Nitro a repetitive game, it's a frustrating one. So I made it to the end of the second championship and I had almost a self-reflective moment. Like, why am I still doing this to myself? I got to a point where I had felt like I had seen everything the game had to offer, and I made the conscious decision to walk away. I never go into these videos with the expectation of quitting a game, and I don't like being so negative on a game. I try to see the good in things. But Nitro pushed me to the limits of my patience. For every successful event, I had failed it 2 or 3 or more times prior. And since the events repeat themselves between championships with only 2 tracks per city, it became a been there, done that situation. I even contemplated not putting this video up, but I felt I had to for the sake of transparency and for the sake of the series. Early on in the video, I asked myself if this was a successful translation of Need for Speed to Wii, or if it was Wii shovelware. I wouldn't quite say it's shovelware. It does have some things going for it, but I will say it is a terrible Need for Speed game. It is a terrible adaptation of Need for Speed. It is a rage-inducing bastardization of a franchise plopped onto a console with a user base that maybe didn't know any better. This is by far the worst Need for Speed title I've played so far, and it's one that I will not be revisiting anytime soon. But enough about me, it's time to turn it over to you guys. Was I too harsh on Need for Speed Nitro? Should I maybe give it another shot in the future? It's going to take a lot of convincing to convince me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I do try to read every comment posted. Before I go, thank you to my highest tier patron member, Arcade Racing Central, as well as all of my subscribers over on Patreon. You guys are awesome. My name is Mercy, and as always, have a good one.